Thanks everyone for signing on to Zoom tonight and joining us for this virtual event. My name's Angela McQuillan and I run the arts programming at the Science Center and I curate exhibitions at the Esther Klein Gallery. So since we don't have any physical art exhibitions right now, I thought this was a great opportunity to get to look into different artists' studio spaces and get more insight into how they approach their work. So this is our very first studio tour at Venture Cafe and I know you're going to enjoy it. I've known Marguerita Hagan for about 10 years or so. We first met when I curated her work into a show at an artist-run gallery in Philadelphia called Little Berlin. And we've become really good friends over the years, and I have curated her work in many more shows since then. So you'll see in a minute, if you don't already know how talented Marguerita is as a sculptor. In my opinion, many of her ceramic pieces seem to almost defy gravity. I've been to her studio many times. It's located in her home, which is an amazing property. It's a 6,000 square foot historical property that once used to be a speakeasy, and it still even has some fixtures left, like the bar from the speakeasy. Marguerita not only creates her own work in the studio, but she also teaches classes and holds exhibitions and performance events with her husband, Pierre. So needless to say, this is an amazing multifunctional creative space, and I'm really excited to share this with you today. So I think that's everything. Please welcome Marguerita, and I'll let her take it from here.
Thank you, Angela. Well, you guys, thank you so much for coming. I'm so excited to be doing this. And Angela, thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. It really is, it's heartwarming to know that I can be with you guys I love so much, and those I haven't met, but I'm wishing everybody really well during this very difficult time that we're going through on our planet and for all of us. But let's have a little fun here tonight. So here, I'm gonna welcome you into my studio. Here we go. Now, I'm having to hand hold the laptop, so let me just give, some of you haven't been here before, but this sculpture hangs on the ceiling right now. It's called Premier Pas, and it's French for first step. It's inspired by the system of oak tree roots that connect over hundreds of miles, sometimes under the ground. This room was probably, this house was built in 1870, and this is my studio where I spend most of my time, and I teach classes in here. We're gonna take some time looking at that piece in just a little bit. You have some tableware. And walking around is not really an easy thing with the laptop. So I'm just gonna let you have a peek right here of this space. This is the old bar area, pardon the wobbliness. This is the old bar area, and Pierre turned it into an interior garden. But you can kind of get a view here. But we're gonna come into the studio now. I thought that I would share with you, there's an exhibit that it's on hold like a lot of things are right now. It's called Rising Tides, curated by Laura Igo, incredible curator. And the piece that I'm gonna share with you, I've been working on for a few months, but I was gonna share the process with you, and also the large wall installation with the video. I'm working on a collaborator, Rich Gretzinger, who's on here. So when we do question later on, if you have a put in that might be directed about the animation that we worked on, we're gonna try to take a little peek at that. Then Rich also, so we can share that conversation. So let me put this down. There, now sitting here, it's good. So thank you all for being here. So this sculpture was inspired by female brain coral spawning. And I have some images prepared to show you the process of this piece. Right now, it's been fired once and it's in a bisque state. Let's see how I do here. Okay, what do I do when I prepare for a piece? Well, I was fortunate enough to be diving and snorkeling this year in like around Cuba and Cayman Island, and I was so blown away by the things that I was seeing that it inspired all these sculptures that I'm worked on this year that are abstractions. I call my marine abstracts. So this one is inspired by the spawning brain coral. Other ones may be by sea sponges. Let's see if I can bring up some images, if it will share here. This is, these pictures that I'm going to be showing you, hopefully I can have that work out. How's that looking? Can you see some brain corals, some star corals, you guys?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So in order to make this work, I really want to understand it, and I want to know how it's engineered and what does it do and what does it interact with. 'Cause it's not an isolated thing, but the most fascinating things you learn. So this is a detailed version of a female brain coral that is spawning, and those beautiful pearls are her eggs. It's really touching to me, but brain corals and star corals, they spawn one time a year only at the full moon in late July. And it's because they know that the ray of the light ray, the spectrum of light, that is at this exact point that they know to spawn at that time, and they only do it once a year, and it's called broadcasting, which is when the females will broadcast their eggs out, and 15 minutes later, the male corals of these species will broadcast their sperm, and so they fertilize in the open ocean that way. Now, see all the ridges on this great photo of a brain coral? I was like, if you kind of know about a brain coral, you know they have those ridges, not only the labyrinth, but the ridges on the labyrinth. And what was fascinating in this process that I learned is that they are the tentacles. They come up at night. These are nocturnal creatures. So in order to really present this piece truly in the spirit and the nature of it, as I do with my work, I had to really understand it, which is a really fun thing to get to do. But they're beautiful tentacles, and they come at the night, and this is such a great, this thing helped me to know that I was going to be able to like get through this part of my sculpting. This is another, this is probably a star coral spawning there. So let's see. The next thing I want to show you is the process of building this piece. Did y'all know about those tentacles? I didn't. Okay.
No, I had no idea.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. So very different looking piece that I'm showing you here, but that's how I start. I coil it, and the work I do when I'm doing these is like, I really do look at the pieces, but then I really go intuitive to see where the clay wants to go and what form it's going to express itself. Each piece is very different, and it's a really different experience with each one. So already to get this piece to this point, I've coiled it, and now I'm adding, it's like drawing in clay, adding I'll call this the labyrinth, the ribbons. So I make them, and then I'm attaching them. And that brain coral I showed you, would look like a little hat from the 1920s. That really helped me, the way that I laid out the pattern of these walls, because I did it like following the design of that that coral. So here I am adding, it's pretty messy looking, huh? But then you smooth it out. The other opportunity in working with this clay, and any clay, is to keep it damp while you're working on it, especially when you're working on it for, you know, almost 2 months in the wet state.
Marguerita, when you create something like this, do you like sketch it out beforehand, or do you just make the whole structure intuitively?
Sometimes I do. you have to have a launching off point, and I did have, I looked at corals, and I looked at the forms, and I did do a little sketch. And then sometimes it'll change from there. But when they grow sometimes they'll have domes, and they'll have new domes growing off. So it's like the feeling that I really love to energize and focus on is growth and abundance and thriving. So I did really want this to feel like it was moving and growing. And I just want to feel like the spawning is new life, and it kind of just coming out of the top of her head in a way. My pieces sit in all different positions. And I love that, because sculpture is a great thing. It helps us to see things from different perspectives. And I love the adaptability and the flexibility. She had to get wrapped up every night very carefully, but whenever I wasn't working on her, there she is. Here I'm adding still, and I'm going down the sculpture. But what's different about this piece is that I have all the walls of the labyrinth on the piece by now. The next thing I'm going to do is start cutting holes into it, which I have started here at the top. But she sits in one position. She is different than some of the other ones, because it had to, in order to kind of do, it had to have one way to sit. I think on this piece was a little different. Wonder why that looks like that. I'm not sure why that looks down like that. Oh, there we go. So after I got I'm starting to add the tentacles here. And there we go, I'll do it like that. Here's tentacles being made, and there, boy, I made hundreds of these things, and then they got attached. Just going through the piece. And you can see the score marks on the walls there where I'm adding the tentacles. I gave her a name. My daughter Lucy was looking at this. She goes, "Mom, it looks like Nefertiti." And I was like, "It does." So I looked up Nefertiti, which of course it's an Egyptian name, but I never thought about the translation. And it's the most perfect name for this piece, because it means that the beautiful woman has come. And that's the name of the sculpture. These tentacles, because it's alive and moving, and I looked at lots of different images, these are bending and moving as they go down the piece. And this piece took a real big turn. It changed everything about it. We'll see in just a second. But here I'm getting to add the eggs on. The eggs were really fun to get to. Each step you get to, the walls are done, you add the tentacles, but it was fun to get to add these.
Marguerita, we have one question. How do you keep such delicate pieces from collapsing while the clay is wet?
Well, you can't, parts of this type of clay will dissolve if it gets too wet. And sometimes you just have to be very careful. I spray it, you have to be really careful. We'll get to, you'll see in a minute why I'm kind of choosing my words carefully. You'll see why in just a minute. I hope that answered your question. But you can't let it dry out, or you can't work on it, and you can't let it get too wet or you'll lose it. So what happened, I had spent a very long late night. I felt like I was finished with the piece. I was very excited. I came down the next morning, show Pierre, and there wasn't a vertical piece on my table. There was a plastic mound on the table, and I lifted the plastic, and it was in pieces. That's never happened to me, but there's so much tension going on in the world right now, and there was so much happening, and I almost feel like she kind of just collapsed under the stress. It was just the weekend before we had to shut everything down with the COVID-19. But on the left, the piece with the tentacles was really like broken so badly, but I brought her back together, and then the piece on the right side of the screen, I had to work on, but I took a day away, and it was a good day, and came back to it, and I felt like this is mostly, there's it had fallen on the tentacle on one side, and all the tentacles were broken off, and I had to save them. But when this sort of thing happens, you know that it's always going to be better as a result. And I know that's true of this piece now. And I feel like it's such a analogy of what we're going through now in our world, and many of us in our personal lives with everything going on. But the lighter colored material you see around the base of some of the tentacles is an incredible mender that's made by Duncan. Any ceramicists out there listening, it's just for low fire, but it's incredible. It's called Patch Attach. My dear friend Patty always called it Patch Attack, which was a good name, especially for it right now. So looking down into the piece, I had to really meld them into one piece, but this is pretty much what it looked like. Yeah.
That's so sad.
I feel very choked up looking at it, but I had so many tentacles, and I saved them, and I kept them wet, and I stepped away for a day, and I was able to match about 3/4 of the odd tentacles to their home base on here, which was kind of like doing a mosaic or a puzzle. Here she is. She's okay. And I let her, she dried for a week carefully. And then I took a day with her to sand and do some things that I could, but you can imagine how delicate it was. Getting her into the kiln was, I can count on the fingers on one hand, the times I was in my ceramic life that I felt so careful and so anxious about moving any of my pieces. This was one at the top, because there's not that many places that you can hold it really carefully. But of course she had her own private kiln ride. And we had a successful first firing, and that's the seat she's in now. It's called a soft bisque, and this is a low fire clay, so I do an 010 bisque first so that I can handle the next steps. Usually I'll be able to, sometimes I do some sanding, sometimes I can just go right into the airbrushing of the underglaze for the color. And a lot of my pieces in this series I airbrush with a white underglaze, so even though people think these pieces I do are porcelain because of their color, but they're not. Porcelain, a lot of porcelain would melt over at the high temperature it has to go to with some of the way that I work with this clay. So
just for people who don't know a lot about clay, can you kind of just quickly explain the whole process? Like you fire it bisque and then you glaze it, right?
Yeah. For these kind of pieces I do, I will, like I've showed you some process so far. The next thing I do, I airbrush. So I airbrush the liquid color onto it. This like liquid color clay, which is called underglaze. There's no gloss or glass in it. It goes under a glaze. So this is what Angela is referring to. And so I will airbrush this. I'm still sanding it to smooth it because of the kind of the process that she went through, she needs extra care right now, like sometimes we do. So I'm gonna continue sanding it and get the surface really smooth and humming, and then I will airbrush white. And for this piece, I want the end result to have a royal color for her being the only female pharaoh in the Egypt's history, and it was the most successful and abundant time of all the history of Egypt is when Nefertiti ruled. So I'm gonna airbrush the tentacle tips in a deep purple violet, but the rest will be all white, and it will be flat with no glaze. But if you were to do a glaze all over, you would do it after you do the underglaze. For me, on such delicate work like this, I will fire it through each stage to stabilize it so I can do the next stage. But like the underglaze could go into one firing. Sometimes you might need 2 or 3 depending on how you're rolling. But this one, I'm gonna do the white, and I'm going to fire it on, and then I'm going to wax, protect all the eggs. You could do it with the latex masking peel made by Duncan, but I'd have to paint the latex on every egg, and then I'd have to spray the purple, the violet, and then I'd have to peel the latex off, and that's just too risky on this piece because the eggs are balancing between the tentacles, and it's already been through so much already. So what I'm gonna do is put wax on the white after the white's been fired, wax them with the liquid wax, and then I'm gonna airbrush the violet on, and then it's gonna go back into the kiln, and the wax will keep the eggs white, and but then I don't have to peel it off. It'll disintegrate in the heat of the kiln, and then it'll come out with white eggs and violet tips. And then I'm going to put a clear glaze on the eggs and on the little beaded tips of the tentacles. And then I'm going to fire the glaze, and then it will come out. And then I'm going to do a sheer iridescent and do a mother of pearl luster so that the eggs are very pearly, iridescent, and the tips of the purple tentacles. Yeah, that's the plan.
It's a very intense process.
Yeah. Let's see. So that's Nefertiti. And I don't know if you guys have any questions about her right now.
I see one question in the chat box. Can you say again what color or colors it'll be when you're done with it?
It'll be all white, except for the tips of the tentacles, especially soft, very soft at the bottom area. But as it gets up, it's going to be deeper violet. And then the eggs will remain white, and they'll be pearly and iridescent, but then they'll really be a beautiful contrast against the deeper violet at the top because there's more eggs up there.
And will you keep the name Nefertiti when it's finished?
Oh yeah, it's definitely, but her official name is The Beautiful Woman Has Come. Yeah, parentheses, Nefertiti. I want to, let's see. I wanna, let me try something, you guys. Share screen. Okay, now, I thought that I would talk to you about, see if I can get this to come up. Here we go. This is what we're looking at. You see it's the map of the world, right? So in the Rising Tides exhibit, Laura has given me a very big wall. It's been very exciting to dream and imagine, but it is 15 by 33 feet. And I wanted to do something. The Rising Tides is celebrating the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. And it's April 22nd. And I was thinking about our whole planet. And I was really, the this image came to mind, but it turns out that this also is an image. We know that Apollo 17 took this in 1972, and they are on such a strict protocol, the astronauts, every minute is for 3 wonderful astronauts were looked out. One of them looked out the window. It's the very first time any human saw the Earth fully illuminated by the sun. And you can see why we call it the blue planet, because of the oceans. And so he said, I have to get this picture. So the other 2 helped him, and they got this photo, which has become the most well-known image in the world. And it became the symbol for Earth Day. And thinking of this, I wanted to place my La Mer series, which is work from the ocean. Some of it is 3D. These pieces are from La Mer, but they're my marine abstracts. But the ones that hang on the wall may be shields. And I wanted to lay them out on the wall like they were in the ocean. And so this is a map. I thought, I don't want it random. So I laid them out in the currents, the way the currents run on our oceans. So I laid them out on the floor. I had a video, but there were some problems getting it to play smoothly. So imagine I laid it out on the floor. Patty was here when I did that. And this is a 15-foot high wall. So I decided to use 12 feet diameter for the projection. And I taped it out on the floor. And I actually literally laid these things out on the floor. And then after they were there, I drew them. So this is my drawing of the map. And I shared it with Rich. Now, Rich Gretzinger is a cinematographer, a director of photography, and he is my friend who I love. And he was willing to work with me on this project. And so with his help and his skills, we've been able to do this great projection. And this is outside of the circle, shows here where the Earth is, what you just saw there in the center, because Earth is in space. And I want us to think of our planet, this is our home, and it's also interacting in the galaxy, in the universe, and we're not isolated. So the La Mer pieces I'm hanging outside of Earth are like the marine Milky Way. And then Rich took my photos. I made an exhibit lesson. He took all the photos, and look at what he did with this. So amazing. They're numbered. And so this is a legend for the wall installation. The wall is 33 feet wide. So what I'm going to try to do. Okay, so now what I'm going to try to do is to show you a snippet. Hope I can do it. Of, where are you? Here? No. Well, I gotta find the, there it is. Okay. So Rich,
you might have to switch your screen share. You might have to like turn it off and then reshare.
Okay, okay. That perfect thing. No, that's not what I want. I want the other thing. Here. Maybe it's loading. It looks like it's can you see that?
Yeah.
Yay. Woo! Okay, so look at this. This is so cool. So this is like 33 feet by 15 feet. And I'm gonna play just little bits here and there. So this is the image of Apollo 17. That's the sound of space. And these are lights that Rich programmed that are the size of each of my sculptures. So as you see them coming up, you hear a heart, they're coming on with the heartbeat. Sometimes the heartbeat gets a little hidden in things, Rich said, but it will be there. And then it shows lighting up the pieces. I don't hear it on here, but I wonder if you do. I don't really hear much sound at all.
I can hear it now.
Can you hear it?
Yeah.
It's really, so right here, Rich has animated the clouds, and then we're gonna, the humpback whales start to call like a trumpet to alert, like a, you know, an entrance of a sort. And we're going to be, but I don't hear anything. There we go. The heartbeat got hidden, but it'll be back. But here we're going into the ocean. So the clouds turn into the sea. There are two whales that Rich found, and they're talking to each other, and they're going to be on two different speakers when you get to see this in the museum.
So did you get to install this, or is it just the whole
Everything's on hold. We will. Laura's holding the torch.
And
So,
where is the exhibition again?
the Michener Art Museum in Doylestown. This is up here now at another sequence is that the plankton is rolling in, because many of these things that I have installed in this installation and that I do sculpt are microorganisms of the sea. They're the primary producers of our ocean, and they're like the basis of life on our planet. The first life started in the ocean, but they're one cell, so you can only see them in a microscope. And they house plankton, like diatoms and dinoflagellates, and you can see them from space, from satellite video when they bloom. And this is Rich created of actual footage of plankton blooming seen from space. And it creates great feeding frenzies for the life. It's this act here that helps to photosynthesize more than 50% of the oxygen for the planet. So breath we breathe is because of these organisms that we can't even see. But they need our help right now. They're in great distress, as are we. So I think this show, Rising Tides, is even more important than it was before, although it was incredibly vital. It's what we're experiencing now seems to be to make that everything stopping to reset and to listen to nature, who has called a halt to everything for now. But let me, I think those are the things that I plan to share. So I guess I could go on to the stop sharing. There we go.
Cool.
There. Anyway, there's a lot of good programming around this exhibit. Laura's extended the show for 2 months, so it'll be up till October 25th instead of ending on August 31st. And the thing we don't know is just when it will start, but we'll figure that out. And we're going to do a digital, a virtual panel discussion with their 7 women in the show, which I'm really honored to be showing with the 6 other women, 5 living, and 1 is Paula Winokur, who's passed away. But on Earth Day, April 22nd, there'll be a live streaming through the museum for the exhibit.
So how did you get inspired to do all this research and make work into these these marine organisms?
Wow, Angela. I was doing the wildlife shields, and some of you have on here might have known me for a long time and know I was like 25, and I was blown away when I was snorkeling in Hawaii in tropical waters for the first time. I couldn't believe the patterns swimming around with me, or me swimming around with them. So I had to go home and started the wildlife series, putting patterns on dinner plates front and back, or bowls and platters. But the shields made them more of an art form, and they hung on the wall. And so I was working on the shield, but I took a long break, and then I came back to them again one other time, and then I had to take a break because I don't want to just get too much into production. But when I was working on Land Lab, the environmental art residency through Schuylkill Center and the Center for their Emerging Visual Artists, I was working with Maggie and Ben Mills. They started to kind of whisper in my ear again, and I thought we were addressing, the loss of 1/3 of our honeybees. So I had the idea to do the shields again and for an Apis mellifera honeybee, which I did. But Angela saw this shield and she liked them and invited to give me a solo show at Esther Klein. And I was so excited. So I was preparing my my species list and my designs. And I noticed that like 85 or 90% of the things that I was working on were all from the ocean. And I was like, because I like a diverse balance and think about all the different ecosystems and make it interesting. But I was like, I stumbled across Ernst Haeckel's book, Art Forms in Nature, because I've taught projects from it. And he was a 19th century scientist, artist, philosopher. He gave us the word ecology, and it was his drawings. He and a number of other scientists, but he's quite notable. His drawings from the 1800s and through the microscope helped the world to understand the unseen world and the microscopic world, as well as I think he was the first to create one of do a drawing of the tree of life. And I saw these spiky, beautiful organisms on a page of radiolarians that he also named 4,000 of the 5,000 known radiolarians, which are some of the earliest life forms. They've been around for 540 million years, and they're beautiful. They're silica, so they're glass lace and they have spikes, and they just blew me away. And I was like, these are shields waiting to be made. So I thought, I guess I've got to, literally was carried out to sea. And that started this new work that I felt like, no, I have to do this. And Angela said that was okay with her, because we had some different plans for that show. But then I started La Mer, and I called it La Mer, which is French for the sea. So I didn't even know what these things were. I was later to discover what they were, but I just knew they were so beautiful. But then when I found out how they've been supporting the planet and keeping our lives going and life going for so many millions of years, it's even more extraordinary to get to discover these things. I want people to know about them through my work, through any way that I can, because if you know about something, you can't help but love these because they're so beautiful. But when you find out what they actually do scientifically and practically for us, it's like incredible. So you can't help but fall in love with them. And we do protect the things that we love, as Jacques Cousteau has said. So it's a mission to share this beauty with the world. And for us to, especially right now, really stop and think about ways that we can contribute in a positive way. One thing about the installation that I named Interdependence that I work on with Rich is that when the viewer gets up to look at the installation, we planned it so that you're gonna be putting your shadow on the wall, and your shadow is gonna be going onto Earth. So I hope people to see the impact that we have, and we all have an impact, whether it's positive or negative. And right now, the only time that we have to focus on is things that are going to restore, recover, and help each other and our planet. So that's another great thing. I think that that installation will help give an impact on.
It's amazing how passionate you are about all this stuff. So I'm gonna go ahead and open it up for questions from everyone. We have a couple here. I'll let Tracy ask her question. If Natalie, if you want to unmute everyone.
So I just unmuted myself, I think. So hopefully you can hear me. And I put myself on video, but my internet is wonky. So if I start to break up, let me know and I will turn it back off. So Marguerita, thank you so much. This was incredibly fascinating. And in so many ways, I just felt like the parallels that you were talking about were so important for what we're doing today. Yeah. So my job at the Science Center is VP of Ecosystem Development.
All right.
And growing the innovation ecosystem in Philadelphia. And I loved how you were talking about and thinking in your exhibit, which I will absolutely go to. Can't wait to be back in the real world when it's not all virtual, when we're able to do those things. But my question is, what are the parallels that I should think about in terms of growing and cultivating an innovation ecosystem in the greater Philadelphia community based on kind of your studies and your artistic interpretations of the broader term of an ecosystem?
Yeah, there are things that we can do. They're small things that make a huge difference. It can feel so overwhelming, but we just have to start one step at a time. There are things that we can do by just, you can, just try to eliminate as much plastic out of our everyday life as possible. There's incredible, innovative, young companies starting. Anybody on Instagram, we see a lot of this, but you don't have to be on Instagram to access this. ETEE is like everything is connected. This is a Canadian company. They making hand soap, a really great, everything's natural, essential oils, biodegradable, hand soap in like a pod that's made from like a beeswax. It's all biodegradable. So you just break it open and you put it into like a glass hand pump with 12 ounces of water. It's really great. So I've got the hand soap and then the dish soap, and then laundry soap. Such big jugs, of plastic jugs, and they're all going into landfills pretty much. And we know where this all ends up, in the ocean. We are really aware, but it's choking turtles, it's suffocating, and now it's just like it's taking over. We have to stop it. And these things aren't really going into recycle. They're going into the ocean, into our waterways. So they have laundry strips that you can get. They're just like a beautiful little strip, and it's all completely natural materials. These are some things you can do. Just try to eliminate just organic, non-GMOs, anyway, the way we eat, in our whole lifestyle. Just thinking about, it's really getting old school and getting back to earlier days when we live closer to nature and the environment.
Are there certain species that you admire, like the way that they interact with each other?
Yeah, there's beautiful things about, from the biggest to the smallest, like the blue whale is the largest creature on our planet. And they have a part of their brain that governs intuition and self-awareness. And this was written up 2006 in an article I read from, it's out of like New York. I'll think of it. It's a famous place. But that part of their brain is 3 times larger, proportionate to that part of our brain. They're so tuned in. They started 65 million years ago, but like 55 million years ago, they evolved not in a line like evolving linearly, but they radiated out like almost an explosion of their species. And the ones that are, hopefully the ones that are still alive today were then, they're the same as back then. They've lived for like 55 million years really well without us. But in the last 100 years, we've been managed to get the 300,000 blue whales. Now they're just like maybe under 3,000 alive today. So I really love the whales very much. And the humpbacks are the singers of the whale, of the ocean. And these songs are unique to each whale. And they actually, they sing to each other. And the other thing about whales is that they stay with their young so long, and it's a matriarchal lineage. Like elephants, think about elephants and the way they care, the grandmothers, the mother and the children, the whales. I think they must have the same type of proportionate of their intuitive part of their brain, and also manta rays. Manta rays have the largest brain proportionate to any living body in the world. They're so sensitive. And the other thing is, in the micro world, I love all life, but the diatoms are pretty amazing because they live in the water, marine waters, they live in fresh water, but they also live in the moisture in the soil. Diatoms alone, they're called the lungs of our planet because they produce more than 1/4 of the oxygen for the whole planet, and they're one-cell organisms. They, like radiolarians, are glass slates or silica, and they're exquisite and lacy, and they house plankton. So they're doing huge jobs for us. So I really love them too.
We have a question from Emily, and just so you guys know, you can go ahead and unmute your microphone and ask a question if you want. Emily's question is, are there other facets of nature that you foresee using as an inspiration in addition to the ocean, such as the forests, deserts, etc.?
Yeah, actually, when I started my wildlife series, I had creatures like reptiles, amphibians, birds, insects, and I have. But it's like there are just so many things that you could do, and then you could dive in and get lost in any one of them. I really am flora and fauna with my original 2 areas, but each one of them is so huge, right? So I've been really, because of the plankton and because of just, I love things that grow so much, I'm really interested in incorporating some of the fascinating things about plants. Grasses are extraordinary. They take silica out of the roots, out of the soil. And in order to protect themselves when the dinosaurs were trying to eat them all up, when they were starting to grow, they actually, they took the silica, and that's when we cut our finger on a blade of grass. It's the daggers of glass, on the microscopic daggers on the edge of a blade of grass. So that's fascinating. Also on the underside of leaves, they breathe. Time-lapse footage of a leaf, the breathing holes on the underside of a leaf. So the answer is yes, it's a matter of like just having time or getting to it. Yes.
So how does your kind of daily studio routine look, and how do you kind of like space out how much time you spend on a piece, and then how much time you spend teaching and stuff like that? What does a day in your life look like?
I have, thanks, that's a good question. I teach classes in the studio, and right now they're on Monday nights, and I have an amazing group of students that I love very much, that are, I feel very devoted, and I do that on Monday nights. And sometimes I'll have a residency, so I'm doing a teaching in that way, or I have a project plan that got canceled we'll see what happens with it, to do an environmental mosaic mural on the exterior entrance of Adara Elementary School in Fishtown, neighborhood of Philadelphia. And working with Charlene Lutz, the art teacher there, and Dennis Devine, which is an awesome name. But he's the kind of chairing the Friends of Adair. And so we had everything ready, and we were going to start it this coming week. But hopefully we can, if school can resume in the next year, we can do it. So these are things that I have. I have lots of projects going on. And then seasonally, I work on my tableware, which is on my website, and it's in a couple of museum shops too. But I just pretty much work on my sculpture, and I'll start early in the morning, and then just work all day until late at night. And that's not unusual for me. I don't know, the screen just says iPad on it. I'll really work long hours when I'm into something, and it's like an affair, and I kind of run away, and I'm with the piece a lot. I have to stop and do some regular things too, but really, that's kind of what I do. I think I'm in the studio a lot, but then there's the occasions when you're installing a show, or maybe you're on a panel, or
Would you say that you primarily make sculptures like the one next to you, or do you spend a lot of time making your tableware as a ceramic?
the sculpture's the main thing. I do the tableware, like the Michener's gift shop is gonna have it have work, and so I'm gonna be creating some more work for them, but it's more seasonal. The fall, I do a lot of work on my tableware, and at the end of summer to early fall, I'm producing it for the holidays. And then throughout the year, I always have some for people request it, or maybe there's a special exhibit. Like I'm featured with the Bortnatrick exhibit curated by John Gregg at Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts right now. The show's coming down on the 5th. And because Bortnatrick was an amazing sculptor and furniture maker, he really brought beauty to everyday pieces that are functional. So John wanted my tableware. That show is highlighting artists that have a branch of their practice. It is functional work. And so I did a whole group of an homage to Bortnatrick and the petroglyphs, because I have a petroglyph line of tableware that is Pennsylvania petroglyph. So I got to do some great exploring in Pennsylvania's petroglyph history, and because that's where Bortnatrick's from. So yeah, sometimes the tableware can be in the museum or the gallery too, but I guess it just depends on what's happening and what's needed.
And for those of you who don't know Marguerita, I just wanted to mention that she has been hosting an annual post-studio tour at her house, where she features her work, her tableware, her sculptures, and the work of other artists. This is something that's a citywide post festival run by Stiva. Are you planning on doing that again this year, or obviously the situation has changed things.
But mostly before this virus, we're putting the houses was on the market, and last October was like my 10th year of doing post as Philadelphia Open Studio Tour. It's always in October, and I knew that it probably was the last one in the house, and it will be, because the house will be back on the market when it's safe to have it on the market. And I couldn't really imagine that I would be here. We didn't know, and so we won't. Well, I'll do it again maybe in the next place.
Okay.
Yeah, But you know, Rich is on here, and I don't know if anybody, if Rich, you wanted to say anything about our collaborative piece, Interdependence. Are you there?
I think I am. Hello.
There you are. Yay. Hi, Rich.
Hello.
I haven't seen you for a while.
I know. When you do a project like this, you're immersed with each other for such a long time, and then all of a sudden, nothing. But we do have some time, though, to work on fine-tuning. What you guys looked at was sort of like the infancy of what we're trying to do. And when Marguerita first contacted me about helping her with this, I was, of course, tickled because I love her to death. And two, I'm like, how could we do something that's not going to take away from the exhibit, her work? It's not my work, it's her work. So that's when we came up with sort of this interdependence to the ocean, her work, and how it melds in with that. And how can we give it justice? That's why, starting with the image map that we created, we're going to project that image map on the wall for her to hang her image, her work. So when we project that projection that you saw, those little blooms of white light are going to be the spotlights for her work. So I'm trying not to sort of interject a lot of animation and a lot of movement, a lot of things, and just sort of let it be. And I like the heartbeat, and I like the sound of the space, and it kind of molds into the sounds of the ocean and the whales, and we kind of play around with the audio a little bit. But it's all loving work in progress, and I'm having a really good time with it.
Yeah.
Marguerita, this is
Yeah,
Anne.
Anne, hi.
Hi.
That's my sister, Anne.
Wow.
Yes, well, Marguerita is the wow, though. I have a question and a comment. My question is, when this exhibit finally goes up and the show is open in a brick and mortar form, your pieces will be sold as part of the exhibit. Is that? I was wondering if that would happen, or are they just for show?
Everything will be available, and people can just, I guess the museum will direct people to me about of any interest of that kind. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And once again, I just have to tell you that your work is so extraordinary, and I've said this to you a million times, but every time I hear you talk about it, I just am so moved yet again. Not only how you take the lump of clay and form it and shape it into this living thing for all of us to enjoy, and really it takes our breath away. Not only that, but you bring to life for us as well the story behind it, through the research that you do and the information that you share about each piece's importance to life here on Earth, from the depths of the ocean, to the top of the sea. And I just really want to thank you a million times over again for what you do and share with all of us.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you. I love you so much. This sister of mine worked with Jacques Cousteau. She was the head of membership for the last 13 years that he had the Cousteau Society.
Wow.
Thank you, Anne.
So I think we'll take one last question. Did Lucy want to share something?
I just wanted to say Marguerita was born this way. Unbelievable passion. And it's so moving, Marguerita, to hear you and how there's no separation from your art and your life. It's all one. And I just thought what you shared and the way you shared tonight was so perfect for what's going on in this world, that life as we know it can come all apart, that our work can come all apart. And we can step away and we can reset and regroup. And that your work with Rich as your work showed up as little beams of light, it moved me to tears. I was crying so hard because I thought, this is it. What matters is how we work and how we are in the moment. And if our heart is fully in it, if our love is fully in it, in that moment, it goes out as beams of light to the whole world, really to the whole universe. And I just couldn't think of a better thing to be doing tonight or any time than to be listening to you. And to know that no effort is ever lost. And if we are really in our heart and in the moment, whatever it is we're doing will come out as beams of light. And you are such an example of that. And thank you with all my heart.
Thank you so much for sharing, Lucy. And thank you, Marguerita, for giving us this tour into your space, into your process. We've really enjoyed it.
This was our first studio tour, and Marguerita, I have to say, everyone that will follow will have a very, very challenging time to live up to what you were able to share with us tonight. If folks are still interested, every week at Venture Cafe, there are 9 other Venture Cafes around the world. So we do, at least the US ones, do a global toast. And so we will do a little bit of a cheers. And in the absence of you all leaving the room, I would just love to say cheers with my empty glass to a lovely evening. And thank you so much for sharing. It was a beautiful end to tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.